Oh, that's too far. Why are you recording?
Recording you.
You're adjusting. Trying to get into this tiny little car.
Yes.
Okay.
Onward.
I don't know if I've ever driven a Mazda before. In part 8 of our trip to Taiwan and Palau, we decided to take a road trip around the island of Palau. We thought this would be a good way to take a break between our snorkel tour days. To get a rental car for a day, we actually used the front desk of our hotel, the Sea Passion Hotel. This was the most informal and odd rental experience of a car we've ever had. The previous day, we asked the front desk if they could book us a car for around 9 a.m. So around 9 a.m. we're at the front desk and a lady came around with a car and some paperwork. The car was paid for in cash. They didn't take any credit card information. They just took our driver's license. All the paperwork was literal paperwork. There were no computers involved, no credit cards, nothing. With $50 handed over, she handed us the keys to the car and said she would pick it up the next day at the hotel. With the easiest car rental experience of our lives out of the way, we headed out on the road. There's not a lot to see driving around Palau, so the first thing I bookmarked was a World War II Japanese communication center, and then as well as a cultural heritage site a little ways beyond that. Because we started out on Malakala Island and had to drive over Koror Island, we ended up going over the Japanese Friendship Bridge on the way to the main island of Palau. Not long after getting onto the main island, we took a right to get to our first destination, which is the World War II Monument. This was our first touristy site that we went to on Palau, and as we went to go park, we noticed that there was a sign saying you had to pay. Since we had seen all we needed to see from the car, we decided to drive on. We drove past the American Embassy, which has huge gates around it, and on to the next cultural heritage site. Unfortunately for us, the cultural heritage site required a pass that you had to buy in advance to go to. So we took a quick little look and then headed back to the car to enjoy some more scenery driving around Palau. Our next planned stop was going to be the Palau Capitol Building. This relatively medium-sized grocery store was actually the only large grocery store we saw while driving around the island until we got back to Koror. Driving down the road to the Capitol building, you could see it a little ways off through the trees. It's a very pretty and very new Capitol building, and when we pulled in on a weekday, it was actually not very busy. In fact, even though it was a weekday, it didn't look like anyone was around even when we walked up to the front door.
Look at those birds. So cute.
Since there aren't a lot of lunch spots around the island, we decided that we would go to the deli right down the road from the state capitol building. This deli is right up the road from a resort with a golf course, but I can't imagine wanting to go to the resort when you have this beautiful spot right here. We had really good fresh seafood here and a beautiful ocean view with birds in the distance. Because it was low tide, after we ate lunch, I decided to take my camera with my big old 100-400 lens out onto the sand to see if I could catch some photos of some birds. After an excellent lunch and a bunch of photos of some birds, we headed back out on the road past the Capitol building and farther north. On the way out to the main road, we stopped at the market to see what it was like in one of the markets around Palau. We were looking for something cold to drink and hoping to grab a snack for the road. Melody ended up getting a chocolate bar for the road, and it was a matcha chocolate bar, and she absolutely loved it and really wanted to bring more with her home. We laughed out loud a bit when we saw this tour bus, as Long Rainbow Happy Tour is an absolutely awesome name. On the east side highway heading north, towards the top of the island, is this causeway. Since we were told crocodiles hang out near the mangroves, we just assumed there were like a million crocodiles in that water. Close to the farthest north side of the island is a Japanese World War II lighthouse. We were planning on stopping there, but after seeing the rather sketchy parking area and that there was a fee for it, we decided we didn't want to risk it and we just headed back out. Something we didn't mention before are these ridiculous speed bumps in Palau. They look relatively normal, but the first one we went over, we actually bottomed out the car. We learned that you couldn't go over the speed bumps in our car at more than 5 miles an hour without scraping the bottom. Olay is the end of the road for our road trip. You can't go any farther than this unless you put your car on a boat. So it's time to turn around and head south down the west side of the island.
I've never had to wait for a crab to cross the road before.
Hi, crab.
On the way back, we saw that there was a viewpoint not far off the main highway, and since we had plenty of time to spare, we thought we'd go check it out. We were pleasantly surprised after a short drive up the hill. There's just enough space for a couple cars to park here. Because this was the narrow side of the island, we had views of both the east and the west side of the island. After checking out the viewpoint, we headed back down to where the mangroves were to do two things. We wanted to check out the mangroves to see if there were any crocodiles that we could see, and also there was a bathroom there that was a very important stop. By the time we got back to the main loop road, it was late afternoon and it was starting to rain. Not long after a rainstorm, we spotted this van with guys in the back. They all looked in good spirits, but they had to have been absolutely drenched as they had just come through a downpour. When the rain cleared up, we got these spectacular views of clouds with the sun setting. On the way back over the Japanese friendship bridge, we had the spectacular sight of a sunset on one side and a rainbow on the other side. We did a quick freeze frame here because this is $7.39 for 1 gallon of gasoline. While this may not be the most expensive gas in the world, it is pretty darn expensive by American standards. On the way back through Koror, Melody wanted to stop at the Taiwanese embassy. Unlike the American embassy that was covered in cameras and gates and big fences, the Taiwanese embassy is just a door in the local mall. Considering it was late evening, the embassy was closed, but then we were on our way to go get some dinner. Since we still had our rental car, we figured we'd get something in the main town center of Koror, which is a little too far for us to walk from our hotel. We were lucky enough to get there before the big crowds arrived and order our food before it would take too long. We really enjoyed the food, and it was a very authentic Indian atmosphere. After dinner, we would take the short drive in the dark back to our hotel, and then that would be our evening.
Okay, this is our right-hand drive little Mazda from Japan that we got. And while Melody has enough room, I put the seat all the way down and all the way back, and I can barely fit a left leg in here. You can barely, can't really tell because it's a little bit dark, but yeah, so we've been driving on the right side of the road with a right-hand drive car all day, and that was just a little bit weird. Other than that, it was a nice little car, little ancient Mazda. Okay, checking out.